Hello and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be cleaning up Apple's high-end 15-inch MacBook Pro from 2006. And as we can see, it's quite a dirty machine. And this originally cost 3,999 Australian dollars back when this was released. And this video was made possible thanks to the generous donation from Electronic Recycling Australia, who kindly provided this laptop. They're one of South Australia's leading electronic recyclers who assist and provide people with disabilities ongoing employment. So let's see if we can clean up and get this really old thing working. This is a laptop that's clearly seen a lot of use, and certain keys have their fair share of grime on top, but this 2-2 late 2006 MacBook Pro is known to be pretty robust and reliable. Strong enough to keep running with what looks to be acid spilt on the palm rest. The rest of the machine, while dirty, is pretty straight with very few dents. Even the base of this laptop has very minimal scratching, but does it still turn on? The answer is thankfully yes. Installed is macOS Snow Leopard and the RAM has been upgraded to 4GB. This was the high-end 15-inch model sold by Apple near the end of 2006, with the 2.33 GHz Core 2 Duo processor. The battery in here has only done 209 cycles but is completely dead and will need replacing, so let's clean it up and get it working well once again. I'm going to be installing a new battery, but this can get quite expensive. I decided to cheap out and get one of the cheaper ones, so I'm hoping that at least it lasts a few hours on a single charge. This one came from an Australian website, costing 60 Australian dollars. Apparently this has the same 60 watt-hour capacity. I'll see how long it lasts later in the video. I started off the cleaning with a healthy dose of eucalyptus oil. If you ever buy secondhand electronics, be sure to give them a clean. I'm curious to know exactly what this laptop was originally used for, as the dirtiest and I guess the most used key is the right bracket. Perhaps they did a lot of coding. Feel free to post your guesses in the comments below. The original owner must have opened it quite a lot for the silver coating on the screen release to completely wear away. I've never seen this happen before. The 15-inch TFT widescreen display was a real highlight of the system back in 2006, although it appears to have lost some of its brightness over the last 15 years. And to begin the disassembly, I removed the battery, which didn't even require the removal of any screws. This piece of black tape I'm pretty sure wasn't originally here, but the keyboard and trackpad work fine, so I'm going to leave that alone. Accessing the RAM is also pretty easy. This MacBook already has the maximum 4GB of DDR2 across the two sticks seen here. Now the plethora of screws can be removed. If you're planning on taking one of these apart yourself, do yourself a favor and follow a tutorial. If they want to sponsor my channel, I'd be happy to tell you which one I personally followed. I'd also recommend keeping track of the screws in a segmented container. While a lot of them look similar, you don't want to put them back in the wrong places. And to remove the top casing, I carefully went around the edges with a plastic spudger, working my way from the screen to the trackpad. And before you take off the top casing, be sure to disconnect the Lego style connector which is attached to the logic board. Next, I went ahead and removed the 6x dual layer super drive, which if you didn't know is what Apple calls a DVD rewritable drive. This is very dusty, giving me high hopes that the fans and cooling fins will also be clogged. To get access to the heatsink, you've got to completely remove the logic board. This means disconnecting all the visible cables and screws. There are quite a few screws, about 4 different types, and cleaning out the fans and cooling fins should make it run a lot cooler. Having all the dust clogging the vents wouldn't be helping. That's well over a decade of computing that made this all possible. With some careful wiggling, the board came out easily. The thermal paste on the processor dies is extremely crusty, and combined with all the clogged air vents, would have meant this ran very hot. The heatsink itself looks like it would adequately cool the CPU and GPU chips with an application of new thermal paste. I began by brushing off all the dust that had built up throughout the system. There was sure a lot of it. In saying that, my Dell G715 got pretty dusty just after a year, so you can only imagine how bad a 15-year-old MacBook would be. For a laptop from 2006, having 256 MB of dedicated graphics memory was pretty decent. The ATI Mobility Radeon X1600 also featured in a few gaming-orientated Alienware laptops in 2006. However, there were more powerful laptop graphics available at the time. I made sure to clean the surfaces off with isopropyl alcohol, which leaves no residue behind. Since I was going to have to mount the thermal paste upside down during the reassembly, I decided to spread the paste out with a plastic card. I did this as the heatsink must be put back in the casing before the logic board, with the CPU and GPU dies facing downwards. This was a little bit fiddly as I didn't want it to trap any connectors underneath. I also didn't want to misalign the heatsink with the fresh thermal paste applied. Next, the freshly cleaned out fans could go back in. I only now realized that there was something spilt around the edges of where the optical drive sat. I tried cleaning it with isopropyl alcohol and eucalyptus oil, but when those weren't effective, I used some Ajax spray and wipe. While the hinge feels nice and strong, I thought I'd apply some new thread locker to stop the hinge screws loosening over time. And in place of the original 120GB 5400 RPM drive, I'm installing an inexpensive SSD. You don't need to put a particularly fast one in here as the interface is only 1.5 gigabits. It's definitely an old laptop, one which has seen tons of use but it's still running. With all the screws back in, the new battery could be locked in place. The color doesn't exactly match, but since it's on the base, I don't think it really matters. Last of all, I cleaned off any remaining marks and gunk on the outer casing. Thankfully, the laptop's still turned on. I'm installing macOS 10.7 Lion, which is the newest OS it officially supports. I am aware that it can unofficially run up to 10.9 with some third-party patches, but for now, 10.7 Lion is fine to test with. So let's try using this refurbished 15-year-old MacBook Pro. First up, I tried playing some old school Runescape. This was definitely playable, and I always have lots of fun logging in and playing this game on old machines I clean up. Another free game I enjoy playing on old school computers is Super Tux Kart. This Mario Kart inspired racing game runs absolutely great here. It's impressive considering the screen resolution is 1440 by 900. While the latest versions of Minecraft won't run in macOS Lion, version 1.10 did, without any problems. With the render distance set to 10, and without the use of Optifine, it ran at around 45 frames per second. Totally playable, even on this old laptop. Even editing photos using Photoshop CS5 was totally possible. Using the Liquify tool on high-resolution images usually lags out much older computers. It ran completely fine here. Modern websites such as YouTube do still run, but setting the video playback to 720p wasn't the smoothest experience. Hey, and if you're on Twitter, why not give me a follow? For such a heavily used laptop, the keyboard still feels excellent to type on. This is one of my favorite keyboards on any laptop I've used, and the overall design is similar to the PowerBook G4 that it replaced. The main difference being that the MacBook Pro is far more powerful and slightly thinner. The new thermal paste must be doing good because when I tried to run RuneScape, Minecraft and a YouTube video all at the same time, the CPU only reached 76 degrees Celsius. This laptop is a workhorse and for many years got the job done for its previous owner. Using the new battery, I was able to comfortably get about 3 hours of use on a single charge, which isn't bad at all. The main downside to this laptop is the 32-bit EFI, which is the main reason it's stuck on such an old version of macOS. But if you need to run old software, this is a dependable machine that has many more years of life left in it. Cleaning it up and putting in an SSD has really made this machine shine once again. Thank you very much for watching. It was honestly a lot of fun cleaning up this old laptop. And while the hardware is outdated, it's honestly a truly cool design and I'm glad to have one of these in my collection. Also big thanks to Electronic Recycling Australia who provided the laptop. And they actually sell really good priced refurbished laptops and computers on their website, so I'd strongly suggest checking that out in the description below as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.